Difficult conversations. It's probably the thing that fuels my practice more than anything else is the fact that people don't know how to have difficult conversations. So by the fact that I'm even teaching this subject may mean that I have less clients over time if people learn how to do this.
Which would be awesome.
Yeah, work myself out of a business.
What is it that makes a conversation difficult?
Oh, let's see. Well, one, it could certainly be the subject matter. So is there going to be a potential for conflict? That's usually the number one reason why people don't have conversations is because there's a possibility that there could be conflict in the conversation. So
Yes.
Same.
from someone who's a conflict avoider, yes, you would agree. And I think all of us here probably have more of an avoidant style when it comes to conflict. I just happen to be aware that I have an avoidant style and know it's not effective.
I'm also aware and also still avoid.
Yes.
I'm like, I'm avoiding conflict right now. Yes, I am. See you later.
So
go hide.
As a group of conflict avoiders, we still have to work together as a team. So oftentimes we have to have difficult conversations as a way to maintain a team atmosphere. Because the things that go untalked about are usually the things that people let fester and grow, and then they come out in these little proxy wars where you argue about small stuff that really has to do about bigger things. And then when you finally have a conversation that's difficult, you end up bringing all of the conversations in at once and you never get anywhere. So that's another thing that creates a difficult conversation is if I've got to have a conversation with somebody that I've got a lot of resentment or frustration built up with, I may end up inadvertently triggering all the conversations at once. And then we've got all that pain, anger, and angst, and we never really get anywhere.
Or you're also coming in it with a predisposed judgment of how it's going to go or what you think, and you come in it already rearing for a fight.
Yes.
So then you're not already coming in not listening or not speaking to be heard.
That's a really good point. A lot of times people feel like they have to be mad in order to have a difficult conversation. And what I try to get across to people in those circumstances is if you can do this mad, why can't you do this any other way? Because you're already going to come at it from a deficit if you have to be angry to do it, and you know it's not going to work out well. So if you can say this stuff angry, what keeps you from saying it calmly before you have to get to the point where you're angry in order to have the conversation? But then we have to better understand why people avoid conflict in the first place. So we have 4 conflict avoiders here. Let's just talk about why. For me personally, I don't like to hurt people's feelings. I don't want people to feel upset, if at all possible. Now, I do understand how counterproductive that is, so I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. And I realize that by the time it's all said and done, we're going to feel better if we have a really good conversation about it, even if it was difficult. But I still picture that person's hurt feelings and how it's going to trigger my empathy. So I'm going to feel bad because that person feels bad. And then I'm like, well, I shouldn't do that. But I just have to work to overcome it. So that's my reason. What's yours?
It's similar, except for sometimes for me, it's like you said, you're aware that I don't want to hurt people's feelings. I'm aware of how counterproductive that is and how nothing's going to change if I don't say something. Nobody's ever going to get better or learn more about me or whatever if I don't have a conversation. And so but then I realize I need to do that. But then I start thinking about, okay, well, can I have this conversation? So if my anxiety levels are so high that I feel like I can't control my own reactions, I'm going to avoid the conversation because a lot of people have to, don't really have the skills of having the conversation. And if I feel like I need to be the one leading the conversation, then I'm not going to go in it if I don't feel like I'm capable of handling myself.
So you're afraid you're going to lose your cool?
Yes, I'm afraid. And now I can do it in a lot of situations. Some situations I can't do it in. I have a harder time.
Especially if you're already anxious or frustrated.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So
being able to control myself is what worries me a lot in conflict.
So Stacy, what about you?
There's a lot of conversations I think that we collectively avoid because they are not polite conversation or socially acceptable, that there's a variety of opinions on those topics and people have very strong emotions about them. I have a lot of opinions that and feelings about things that aren't generally shared, and I avoid those topics of conversation a lot because I know people have strong feelings about them, as I do. And me and Andrea were actually talking about this. If you know that a topic of conversation is going to be triggering for somebody in some way, that's going to cause them to have like high emotions about it, you already know that you need to come into it with like needing to not be triggered by their being triggered by it. And sometimes that's hard, especially if you've got a lot of investment into your particular thoughts and feelings about that subject. So a lot of times, because of social politeness and such, I'll just avoid those topics entirely.
I mean,
which is unfortunate though, because we need to be having these conversations.
We should be having these difficult.
It's hard to have those kind of conversations though, because it's like the kind that Stacey's talking about in particularly, because you would just be seen as like a gay person in the 1950s. Or,
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you may
That's
be seen
how
as
you would
like
be treated.
like an outcast in some way.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in some circumstances, is that what you fear? A lot of times, is the
No,
repercussions
not in a regular difficult conversation, but like some of the more
in a charged conversation. Yeah, sure.
like a
politically charged conversation or something, or a values conversation or something to that degree.
But on like a regular like difficult conversation between like me and my husband, I think I'm more worried about like the other person's reaction, or just not being my point of view not being valued or saw.
Yeah, sure. So that's another fear too, is that the other person, especially if it's someone we care about, may not value our opinion, and it may make us feel like, well, then if you don't value my opinion, do you even listen to me? Do you care what I care about? You know, is our relationship like where it needs to be? Because I need to feel like you value at least my opinion, whether you agree with it or not, that you at least can see where I'm coming from in order to know that we are on the same page in some way, shape, or form, and especially if it's a really important relationship.